All right. About time to get this show on the road. See some people starting to file in. Jay, thanks for the lurk. Well, hello, Mike Disney. Good to see you, sir. I have a guess. I'm thinking that it is a let me see, Druid Mini, maybe, perhaps. Well, hello. Hi, Amanda. How are you? That is awesome, awesome news. I am going to give it a couple of minutes because at the moment it is me flying solo, and I am not entirely sure if it's going to stay that way. But if it does, that's fine. We've got plenty to talk about, so it is all good. And apparently my dog does not agree with my assessment of it being all good. Right now, Mike, it is me, myself, and I. So if the early indicators are anything to go by, my dog might be making an appearance, at least vocally speaking. All right. Well, we are now 8 minutes of the hour, so why don't we bring this live and going with Rob going solo for now. Aha! That is awesome news. Yeah, so BlueBoxCon. So it is officially 1 week and about 10 hours before I will be getting on the road heading down to Nashville, or the Nashville area. Oh, Tennessee. I'll be making my way all the way through Tennessee. Good to see you. Good to see everyone. So, yeah, so for today, we're going to have a little discussion about level 1 campaigns, or starting a campaign at level 1. Pat, that is great to hear. I'm looking forward to seeing you again, sir. Hopefully, you will be able to make it after work, and we'll see you then. So yeah, I mean, the thing is with level 1, it's normally the start of a brand new campaign. It's because let's face it, not many people are doing one shots at level 1. I mean, I suppose it's possible, but I think they're usually somewhere there in the level 4 to 7 range. Occasionally, people like doing high level one shots. Yeah, this is a different stream. I would probably want to get pre-clearance from John before we did, Uncle Rob's story hour. It's a different shtick. Oh boy, yeah, I can already tell that I'm in trouble with you people. Uh, Pat Fraley, good to see you, sir. Vivi, great to see you. Yeah, I am really happy to be here and see all of you in the audience already. Uh, Tips for lewd adventurers. Oh man, oh Pat, yeah, that's also a very very different. Well, I'm not even going to do a good LMA. Yeah, that's a completely different kind of stream altogether. Actually, Pat, you missed it. I just said 7 days for me. It's 7 days and approximately 10 hours before I get on the road. Huh. I'm sure, Taryn, that your hugs are going to be just fine. Oh, I'm looking forward to seeing as many of you as possible. Um, so yeah, we were talking about level one adventures, and I mean, some of the difficulties with level one. I mean, it kind of goes without saying that it can be a little bit of a struggle. You have obviously you have the fact that regardless of what system you're playing, and it really doesn't matter. You know, 20, 5e, Castles and Crusades. I mean, I can't really speak to Pathfinder, but I'm guessing that it kind of goes there too, where you have the issue that the characters are kind of limited in what they can do. In later editions, they may tend to have a bit more health, especially if you're starting off with max hit points for them. I know that some of the classes early on, 1E and 2E, and even Castle Crusades, if you're playing a wizard or an illusionist at first level, you've got 4 hit points plus your constitution bonus. That's it. That's max. And also at that point, you're also very limited in what you can cast in terms of spells. The Vancian spellcasting left you with very few options. Not a heck of a lot better, though. At least in 5e, you had the reusable cantrips that you could cast at any time. I'm trying to remember 4e what the spellcasting situation was at first level. It only went through it once, and I honestly don't remember. But so I mean, there are other issues though. I mean, think about it. Actually, here's a question for you. Let's do our first question for the audience. What do you think some of the other issues with first level adventuring is? And I'd like to approach it from a DM's perspective for a second. What do you think some of the problems you would have? I mean, obviously, we talked about the characters being squishy, but which limits it in one sense. But what do you think some of the common themes or things that you want to try to might try to avoid? But it tends to show up like every single time. Any thoughts? Pat, you mentioned meat grinder, and yeah, with squish characters, if you're not careful, it definitely can be a meat grinder. Um, and obviously, if you have player frustration is a good one. Player frustration is a good one. Relate Pat, Mike. Let me ask you a question. Is it in relation to their limitations and what they can do, or is it just the feeling of powerlessness? All right. Yeah, okay. That is definitely the case. I know I have players who the campaign that I'm running now, they did not want to start off at level 1. 5e campaign, they wanted to start off at level 3. Discount Bard, rating with party of 10. Thank you everyone. Thank you Raiders for coming in. Welcome. We are doing a Loremaster's Arcanum. I am Phantom NJ, your guest host for this evening, and we are discussing low level adventuring. Please, let us know what it was you were up to. Whatever it was, I hope you had a great stream. And welcome on in. So, Pat, Pat 66, I want to get back to yours in a second. Petros, can you elaborate a little on expectations versus realities with regards to level 1? I'm kind of curious as to where you were going with that. Mike, that can be a great point. If you have DMs who are, especially for newer DMs, if they've gotten, cut their teeth on doing one shots, which is a great way to, learn how do your first DM practicing, and they're running their first campaign and they're running low level characters, the balancing act and figuring out how to not, automatically TPK your brand new party can be problematic. Huh. That sounds like discount part. That sounds like an interesting game. Uh, Players can think their characters can do legendary right off the bat. Disappointed. Okay, that's a good point. Um, Actually, DM Dingbat, Mike, that's a great thing. And actually, that kind of goes back to Pat 66. You had mentioned as far as limitations on it was limitations on how much political agenda you can introduce. So I I'm trying to figure out, is it, are you thinking of it in terms of wanting to introduce too much too quickly? Because that's the kind of thing, getting to in terms of things that you can do, and Mike Dingbat kind of touched on, is going roleplay heavy, and like political agendas. That's good roleplay fodder right there. Things that you can do in terms of getting them through it. Fairly, you mentioned too much combat can be an issue. It certainly can. Depending on the system, how much they can, how much they can handle, how much you can push them before they're just going to fail. You can set them up to fail if you do too much combat, because they're just not going to have the resources to deal with it. All right, so beginning with characters, they have to get to put their stamp in the game's background. Okay, all right, that's a good point. Actually, I'm going to come back to that and that's a very good point, and I'm going to come back to it in terms of things that you can do. So here's another one for you. For combat, for first level adventures, what do you think? What kind of monsters are you normally sending after? What kind of mobs are you normally sending after your first level adventures? And you might all prove me wrong, but what would you think would be some of the things that you would say? Dragon. Pat, I love you. No, spare. Just go straight after them. Goblins, orcs, skeletons, rats, spiders. So, and tough guy, you touched on it. The slime is an interesting one to send after your first level characters, because that could end very, very badly. Goblins, skeletons, orcs, kobolds. So, how many times do you think you can throw that set of creatures at them before things get really boring? And it's kind of like, all right, we're level 1 characters. How many orcs and goblins do we have to kill before we're level 2 or 3, and we can find something interesting? Guards, and now they're in jail. So one of the things, and you might notice that I have D&D Beyond set up. So one of the things we want to look at is, what are some other creatures? Let's get away from the very, very basic orcs. Basically goblinoids, kobolds, and skeletons. You know, they end fairly guards, and now they're in jail, or they accidentally end up dead. But too soon. What? Do nature encounters. Red Hulk, I like that one. Do me a favor, elaborate a little bit on what you mean by nature encounters, because I think I know where you're going with it, but I don't want to assume. So let's look at monsters. Challenge rating. I'm going to go as high as a 2. So the interesting thing is, there are actually let's load down to a 1, just between 0 and 1, because a 2 ended up with a lot of them. If you look down here, you notice something. There are 32 pages worth of creatures, and granted, some of these are in in very specific settings, just in 5e, but I mean, there's no reason why you couldn't just like pull one of them over to whatever setting that you're using. You don't have to limit yourself. But there's 32 pages worth of creatures between a 0 and a 1 challenge rating in 5e. Let's share some advanced filters and maybe let's see. It doesn't have the ability to limit by... Oh, actually, hold on. Source. Let's do this. Let's go straight just from the monster manual. See how many we get. So, something here? 10 pages of... 10 pages of creatures between CR0 and CR1, and pretty much everybody came up with, most of the people who answered came up with the kind of same 5 to 6 creatures that you see like pretty much every adventure. I noticed this when running through some of the published adventures. It was the same thing. It was a bunch of kobolds, it was a bunch of orcs, it was a bunch of goblins. The expanded Chav Hunter, good to see you. The expanded monster manual is 1, 2, and now 3. Where is this a third-party source or? Huh. Okay. All right. So possibly somebody put one. They created expanded. Like I've got one that Monster Manual. Are you talking about Monster Manual expanded? Because I've got the 1, but I didn't realize there was a 2 and a 3. So, are there actually any new creatures in there, or is that just more detail on the stuff that's already in the Monster Manual? I thought it was just expanded details on them. Oh, okay. Well, I will. In that case, I'm going to need to take a further look in that book. I've been ignoring it too much, apparently. But I mean, you think about it, and there's a lot of creatures in here. And now I've just basically this is only in the monster manual, as well as the basic rules, which they should all be in the monster manual. But again, people you tend to go back to the standards, and that can get I mean, let's face it, that can get kind of boring. It's I would say I'll tell you, for me, it's one of the reasons why the few times that I get to play in a campaign, I kind of dread level 1 because I kind of know what we're going to see. Ah, nice. Chieftains, witch doctors. I like that. So expanding basically expanding on the entire, as far as like goblin civilization type thing. All right, so let's see, gang of bandits, and Pat, you mentioned gang of bandits. That's a good point, and it's kind of a cool thing. One of the tempting monsters that you can use for first level is you know other people. The having the not necessarily the BBG, but just basically their antagonists be you know other humans, or even really any of the races. It doesn't even have to be any of the quote unquote monstrous races. Um, yes, they are definitely thicker. There's a lot more pages. So let's talk a little bit about other things that you can do. I mean, we looked at different monster types, and actually one of my favorite, and this is one of the ones that I kind of need to get back to using. At low level is things like the Kuatoa, because you can have some fun with those. Um, Mike, DM Dingbat, you had mentioned the as far as like role play. So I like to role play. I love having a role play heavy, especially at low level. And especially, here's the thing. Actually, I'm curious. Given that you do heavy role play at low level, do you tend to? And I apologize because I should probably know this, but I have not gotten paid. I watch your streams as much lately as I'd like. Are you using XP or milestones in your campaign? In meantime, Red Hawk, yes, creating a place of encounters with nature, especially if you're doing kind of a setting where they're really coming from nothing. They're people who grew up in a village or a very very small town. Chav Hunter, I agree with you to a point. I like milestones. If you're able to plan your adventure, your campaign out way out, as in where you want to start and where you want the campaign to end, and you have an idea of all the things you want to happen and know what it is you want to be hitting or what doing at the various levels. Milestones are great. I think for the published campaigns, milestones are a fantastic idea. For a sandbox campaign like the style that I tend to run, I hate I abhor it. I can't do it. It's not for me, because there's always, without having a plan out far enough, and because of the fact that my players can literally go anywhere and do anything, then they can interact with the story as they want. It is very very problematic for me to have milestones when there's always going to be a pressure for the next one, and without having an idea of when they're going to need that milestone, because the milestones and the planned leveling, I see milestones as something to be used when you have to be this level, you have to have done this amount of stuff and hit this level to do the next part of the adventure, and it kind of assumes that enough things have happened. I don't plan my campaign out that far because I don't know what my players are going to do. They can do whatever the heck they want, and I've run with it. I mean, if you're able to plan your campaign out that far, more power to you. Go for it. For me, it doesn't work at all. I did it for my current campaign, and I'll be honest with you. I really think I wrecked my campaign by doing it, because after a number of sessions, it felt there was a pressure to give them the next level. And I got to the point where I realized that they had leveled far enough where the initial campaign really just didn't work anymore because they were too powerful. They were just going to really wreck the story at the level they were, and it got to be a bit of a frustration. So, on topic of role playing at low levels, what are some role play aspects that you can do at low level? I mean, obviously there's just the general, general questing, that you can do, or basically letting the players go to town a bit with in terms of, introducing their characters to each other, introducing themselves to the environment wherever it is that they're starting, whether it be at the prototypical tavern or such. What are some other roleplay aspects that you think can be done at low level in order to help the level 1 experience? Thoughts on that? And I'm not saying that there's a right answer either. I'm really curious to see what you all come up with. I've got some thoughts that I'll share. Though right now you're all very, very quiet, which kind of has me worried because that just means I need to keep talking. All right, so I can go first. That's fine. RP backstory. Aha. That's right, Jay. I fully understand. You've got stuff that you need to do. We were talking about level 1, and we were talking about the fact that one of the things you can do in order to make things interesting at low level is go with some heavy role play at low level to supplement any combat. So you're not having level 1 characters basically just grinding through monsters, which at level 1 can take quite a while and be very dangerous. Local politics is a good one. RPing backstory is a good one. Pat, I do like that pre-plan XP amount per session. Actually, that's kind of what I'm doing with Friday Night Crusades, because I am doing XP, but I also have to take into account that they are going to need to be certain levels. They're going to need to be able to level up at least somewhat with the fact that they may not be there every week. So yeah, I am doing a pre-planned amount per session, plus depending on how much they get done. Initially meeting organizations. That's another really good one. So along with the local politics and initially meeting people in various organizations, getting to know the PCs in whatever setting you're in. One of the things that I like to do, and it kind of goes to what DM Dingbat mentioned with regards to backstory, is I'm a big fan of story arcs. I want there to be an overarching story arc, and it may not be one story arc. Honestly, it may not be one story arc for the entire campaign. It may be one giant story. It may be, and my current campaign was this, it may be an evolving story where there's multiple acts and they're not necessarily part of the same story. There may be a loose connection between them, but the different acts may have a different plan, a different climax to them. And what comes afterwards may be only tied to what came before in terms of aftermath at the start, but heading to something completely different. My dog would like to say hello, and I don't know why, because he's got food upstairs and he gets treats. He's really, really, really spoiled. Thankfully, he is not tall enough to jump up and try to get screen time, so I don't have to share that with him. Yeah, so let's see, establishing a connection to the story. There's definitely some of that. Ollie, I am on stream right now. Do you mind? And yes, the answer is he does mind. He's just going to keep getting treats until he decides to go lie down again like he should. Ah, the joys of being a pet father. All right. So, in terms of connecting to the story, I mentioned story arcs, and level one's a great place to start. And some of this ties into what Jay had mentioned as far as like local politics and initially meeting organizations. Start introducing them to who the players are, who are going to be the important people in the story. And players don't necessarily need to know this, and not every person that they meet has to be one of them, but that's a good time to start getting some initial information, get the lay of the land, both for them and themselves. It's also a great place to begin. What I like to do is, in addition to the main story, working with their backstory is have personal story arcs and start working in the little things. But, you don't want to dump everything on them at once. But again, get them some time to, for each character to shine a little, get a little bit of their story going, get a little bit of the main story going. And even beyond that is just, it's also a great time to slowly introduce them to the world that they're in. If you're using a homebrew setting, start off with the local area. Let them, there are different kinds. How many people here? Here's a quick question for you. How many different people here have play or have played, any of the MMOs regularly, whether it be World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy, goodness, why is EverQuest, Guild Wars, you name it. Although Guild Wars goes slightly different in terms of that stuff, but what is one of the main things that constantly happens, or main type quest types that you constantly have at any level, but especially at like first level? You have go kill X number of monsters and what? Come on, I know there's got to be somebody out there who plays MMOs. I know there's got to be a few of you, because I know I'm not the only one. Though I've gotten over that particular addiction. Clear out the cellar or barn. Okay, yeah. I mean that ends up being normally Antiquitous. Antiquitous there's the grinding of the boars, yeah, the killing monsters, the Antiquitous and Damn Dingbat. There you go. Fetch. You're basically, there is the go kill X number of monsters, and there is go, pick me up X number of this thing, because apparently every NPC ever in an MMO is helpless. So now I'm not suggesting that you have your players go fetch or become a courier service as happens, but sometimes, every once in a while, the go find a rare herb, go and, and especially if it's in an emergency situation, you need, there's a child that's ill, or, well, gotta be careful with that, because some people it can be upsetting. But say there's someone who's ill and needs a rare, the town healer needs a rare herb, going and finding it is a great way to, you can have an encounter, maybe two, with some, as Red Hulk mentioned, creatures in nature. Maybe there's something else blocking their way. Maybe there is an outpost of, maybe there's an outpost of orcs that's really honestly too large to fight. And maybe some diplomacy is what's required. Pickpocket teams. Yeah, there we go. It's funny, Mike, you mentioned that brings up another interesting point, because it kind of changes if you're doing a first level city adventure, because, well, then what do you do? If your adventure is like purely city based, then there's different things that need to be considered. Help find a cure for a plague is a good beginning. That could be a bit rough, but help the smithy get the ore for your new gauntlet. That's an interesting one. Helping go find stuff stuff created for the characters. That's one way to get them involved quick. But beyond, one of the nice things about the retrieval quest, it's a heck of a way to introduce your players to whatever setting. If it's your homebrew setting, it's a way to get them to explore it a little and get them into the world. If it's a setting that they're not used to, any setting that they're not used to, it doesn't have to be homebrew. It can be any of the published settings. Maybe you're playing in a in a portion of a published campaign setting that they've never played before. Ends up being pretty much the same difference, no? I have Pat66. I had a new group discover intel on an orc horde that was planning to attack the village. That's a great, that's a great one. I like that idea. They had to survive to get help to stop the attack, which has got to be an interesting thing for Pat. That's got to be an interesting thing for your players, because you're playing the player characters and you've got this orc horde, and your job is to go and get help, as opposed to being the people to stop it themselves. I can see players being a little conflicted there, especially if they're new and not necessarily understanding, the implications of trying to do it themselves. So let's think about this from a city perspective. If we go back to the local politics thing, and in the city, local politics is kind of a different animal, because let's say you're playing in a city the size of, the size of Greyhawk or Waterdeep or Neverwinter or, I don't even know what the Dragonland cities were. Was it Palance or Palanthas? I can't, but any of the large cities, if you want to go really old school, Lankmar. Guild quest galore. There's an idea. Have your characters basically sign up or be part of a guild. If they're all, whether it's an adventuring guild. That's a great point. Yeah, that low-level characters could not stop the horde. And it's a great idea. It does introduce them to the local shakers and movers. And that's a good thing, because again, that is letting them know, getting them involved with the setting. That's getting them involved with, or letting them get an idea of who's who. And not only that, it opens the door for, depending on how that goes, it opens the door for future interactions with those people. But yeah, as far as like guilds, you do have the standard adventurers guild. There's possible, and I want to say that, and it's been a while since he was running it, but Will Dvorak from Wicked Studios was running a campaign where I believe the party, and it was one of the stream campaigns for a while, where I believe the party were actually almost like detectives, or may have actually been detectives. And this was a D&D campaign, but they were like investigators, or maybe they might have just been, part of the city guard or something. And yeah, that's an interesting place to start. I mean, obviously, you want to have that kind of campaign, but there are options even in the city. But there, it really is the local politics become even more important, because you need to know, the players need to get a handle on what it is they can and can't do. You don't want the city guard looking to hunt you down unless you are the city guard. Now, that that is an interesting one there, Pat. It's also a great time to introduce the antagonists, or not necessarily even the antagonists directly. And the antagonist, when I say the antagonist, may or may not be the BBG for the story, but who's working against them? And doesn't even need to be happening straight on. You can do it where, forces there's opposition. It's they may come across forces of either, it could be a cult, it could be a rival guild, it could be a rival adventuring group for all that matters. It may be some kind of humanoid tribe. It could be a foreign kingdom, or a rival city or such. But at first level, I mean, obviously the players are not really in a position to take those things on straight on, but introducing them and giving the hint that there is something more happening. Well, yeah, Pat, and it is, part of it is to survive the initial challenge, but if all they're doing, I mean, really, if all they're doing is just trying to survive to level 2, or even level 3, why not just start them at level 2 or level 3? We're trying, the idea here is we're trying to find things that they can do to avoid it being the same old, okay, we need to kill X number of orcs before we're level 2. We need to kill X number of kobolds before we're level 2 or 3 or whatever. Yeah, trying to find different ways to get there. So let's look at this from a different standpoint, because we talked a lot about things that the DM can do. What are some of the things that the players can do to help the level 1 adventuring experience? And when I say players, I mean players, not the player characters. Read the player's handbook. Listen, I am never going to argue with players reading the player's handbook. That, you know, there's a lot in there, and especially newer players are not necessarily going to be able to make sense of it all. But at least reading up the sections of their characters. So, Mike, you mentioned asking questions of the DM. What kind of questions are we talking about here? Mikey, that, paying attention and taking notes is always a good thing. The EULA. Oh my goodness. Can you imagine EULA doing that in the campaign? I'm sure somebody has. I'm sure somebody has made the players sign contracts with fine print, player character sign. sign contracts with fine print. Isn't that kind of how like every Warlock's story starts? So I'm going to go back. That's Pat. That's always a good thing. A current scene in a game setting in general. Yeah, sure, absolutely. If there's things that they're not clear on, or they're trying to picture this in their mind. And Mike, that's great about the world, NPCs, what their character would know. Always a good one. Here's one that the players can do. We talked about having, you mentioned actually earlier about having their backstory, and I mentioned about player story arcs. Assuming that their backstory includes, people that they would know in the local to where they are, players can always have their characters start initiating that kind of stuff. And any DM worth their salt is going to should run with it. If the player initiates a conversation, or and it's something that they've discussed ahead of time, that they know that this is their backstory and these people are here. If I'm a player, I'm not necessarily going to wait around for the DM to, not necessarily wait around. If there's a break in the action and we have some time, whether it's the end of the day, or we're basically, for whatever reason, we're not on the move somewhere. As a player, I'm going to take the opportunity to go and find out what I can from my contacts. Suggest background details that involve your character. That's a good one, Pat. I like that. Those are the kind of things that, when it comes to we had talked about backstories, and I think it was a few weeks ago. We did an LMA talking about backstories, and one of the things that I find big is knowing what parts of that backstory are important to the player, in terms of things that they'd like, that they'd be open to being hooks. Pat draws. Most players want the new, too long didn't read version of their class and the character to see if they like it. Not absorbing every mode of lore and rules. Sure. Listen. No doubt that there is some of that going on, but I find that sometimes it's all going, whether or not they're going to like it is going to be whether or not there's enough presentation to them, especially early on, to involve them, get them immersed in that class. If you just basically if their class and character are just there for basically seeing what attacks they're using, what skills they're using, and nothing else, yeah, some are going, some are going to feel better than others, because nothing has been done to bring that character into the game. It's you're just basically leaving it up to what abilities feel good to the player, and whether their level of engagement is basically on how useful their character is. Pat, I agree. Getting them involved in the world building, if you are building a homebrew world, and even honestly, if you're using a campaign setting, and you're like doing the little details as far as like a brand new town that doesn't show up on any map because it's too small and it's out in the middle of wherever, having the players help build that, not a bad thing at all. It gives them some ownership, some investment in the setting, gets them involved. You're communicating what they want to work on. That's a great one. Here's the other one. How many times have you, as a player, how many times have you all run in as a certain character class? And I'm going to single out a number of them here. Um, let's go with Paladin, Cleric, Warlock for starters. There may be a few others, but those are the three that hit me off the top of the head. Um, what is something that you sometimes find missing when you're playing those character types? And maybe it's just been my bad luck. I could be wrong. But there's something that I've noticed a lot of times watching some games with those particular, and this tends to be the games that are less role play heavy. The more role play heavy they are, the better it tends to be. And this is not some. I'm going to say right now, this is not something that I've noticed on Blue Box, because John does a very good job of it, and even as far as like the different sided, the guest runners for different games have all been very good about it. Eldritch Blast. Oh my goodness. Oh how I loathe the Eldritch Blast, because really honestly as a warlock you kind of need it. But here's the thing. Have you ever watched a game and you're watching somebody playing a paladin or a warlock or a cleric, and you kind of wonder, has there been any real interaction with them and their god or their patron? Or maybe a wizard, first level wizard, possibly having being kind of like an apprentice, or having an older wizard that they can go to. Um, you know, who's guiding these players? Who's guiding these classes? Especially, and I bring up those three specifically because their powers are being given to them from elsewhere. So as a first level, one of the things what I do if I'm in a game and I'm playing, like if I'm playing any of those three classes, one of the things I'm doing is I'm going to check out, if it's a paladin or a cleric, I'm checking out the local church or local temple. I I want to know who the people there are. Um, if I'm playing a rogue, especially a rogue in the vein of the old school thief, um, am I a member of the Thieves Guild? Because if so, I want to know who my contacts are. If I'm a fighter, um, you know, where was I trained? Who am I seeing for training? Where did my training come from, and where would I be getting new training from? For a wizard, if not even, if not necessarily an older wizard, and not, it doesn't necessarily have to be, the wizard doesn't necessarily have to be an apprentice at level one, but where am I getting my spells from? How am I connected? Is there a library I can go to? Yeah, exploration of the setting is a fantastic way. And not just, and I had mentioned earlier the whole, fetch quests, go here to get a feel for the world. But, and, it was mentioned earlier, local politics, I believe it was Jay that had mentioned it. But getting in touch with your class, how does your class function, and how does that class fit into the setting? How does that player, who does that player look to when they need to learn something new? Because I don't go with, there are hardcore rules for some of the things, and I think even 5e they have for, like, if you want to get more hardcore about it, things that you can do as far as like what the leveling process is. I don't necessarily go that deep in the weeds, because there are some players who enjoy that. There are some who just don't care. But having a feel for my particular class and the things connected to it is a big one. It's funny. There's the druid. They don't care. You say that, but like in 1E, a druid needed to care because after a certain level, there were only so many druids of a given level. So you would have to, in order to level any further, you ended up having to challenge the what do you call it, the druids ahead of you. But yeah, no, true neutral, they don't care. So yeah, I mean, these are the kind of things that you can do, and it's also the kind of thing where you're going to want to figure out how you're handling leveling at in terms of XP. So I'm curious, for those of you who do use XP for your characters, those of you who are running games and you're using XP, are you giving everybody the same XP after a given session, or are you assigning XP on an individual basis? Don't be shy. Like that's fair enough. Depends on the campaign. I understand that completely because I can tell you right now for Friday Night Crusades, everybody gets the same XP just because it there otherwise it's unfair to do it on a person by person basis simply because of the fact that one, we have so many players that not everyone's going to get a chance to shine, and as much as I can try to do that, it would end up becoming even more raucous than it already is. So it's objective based, and they share XP, which also throws in an interesting wrench because CNC goes through the old system where different classes level at different rates. Pat, I was asking for your campaigns. Do you give different XP amounts to different players at during a given session? All right. I'm going to assume that Pat is probably typing at the moment. So, yeah. So, okay. It depends on their actions. There's a preset XP per session. Okay. Yeah. No. So basically, yours does vary from from character to character. They're not all they're getting a preset plus depending on what they do. That's listen. That's very sensible and perfectly fair. This way, no one is completely left out. They're getting points for being part of it, but those who are doing more, or well, not doing, I want to say do more. Those who've had moments to shine, where their particular class or their particular actions have come in handy. Sure, okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right, um, so let's see. There we talked about kind of as a player, kind of forcing the issue. You had the players had mentioned before, or actually a few of you had mentioned before, asking questions of the DM is always a great thing. And DMs, I implore you once again, the especially I know everyone is excited, especially if you're playing in either your new homebrew setting or even your old homebrew setting that you've developed and you've got new players. Um, please, 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 please don't lore dump on your players. Let the players learn the new setting organically. It's it's very hard at first level not to want to give them everything, all the information at once. But you know, the whole meant talking about the as far as like interacting with their the local church or their patrons such it and local politics such it's a great way to let them organically uh ex, you know learn more about the world that they're playing in and it beats the heck out of hearing 6 paragraphs of text describing things, and it'll stay with them. It'll stay with them longer if you let the players explore at level 1 and do the role play and meet the people that are may or may not be important to them, but you know thought it doesn't, like I said, not everyone has to be important, and some may be more important to the players than you had intended. These are the things that are going to stick with them, and make for a bigger thing going forward. Also, level one, as you're introducing those NPCs, please jot down which ones the players are responding to, so that those NPCs that you didn't think were important, if the players respond to them, make them important. Find a way, even if they're just the informant type who lets them know something's going down. All right. So I noticed that Jay is just about on. So we are going to get ready to raid. I want to thank everybody, chat, the Mad Chatters, as always. You are wonderful. And I really love having these sessions with you all, because I know I can count on the fact that you're all going to be active, and this will not just be me talking into the void. So I appreciate all of you. I really, really hope that I will get to meet many of you at Blue Box Con next week. And for those of you who are not able to make it, there's going to be plenty of stuff that is going to be streamed. So please check in. I think there are streamed games going on all Friday and Saturday starting. I want to say it's starting at 1 Central on Friday. I'm not entirely sure. I have to. John will probably mention it later. We call it either Sunday or next Wednesday. Um, so there will be streamed events. There's going to be streamed games going on, and we'll miss you. We wish you were there, but at least you can be part of it by tuning in, and participating in the chat for those games. And some of them are going to be games hosted by or being run by some of some of the people in the community. Please support them. Let them know that you're watching, because I know it'll mean the world to them. It always means the world to me. And we are going to get ready to raid Lord Gazumba. But before we do, here at Blue Box, there is a question that we always have to ask the audience and those of you who are watching. If you are watching the stream and you are enjoying the content that you're seeing, but you're not yet a follower, or you are a follower, but for some reason you have not yet subscribed, or if you did have a subscription and you let that subscription run out, we here at Blue Box have one question for you. What are you doing? Give us a follow, give us a sub, or really, honestly, if at all possible. And if not, just keep watching, participating, lurking. And for some reason, I am not seeing it come up on the stream as far as whether the raid is going through. So I'd like to try that again. Well, this is fun. Why does that not seem to be working? Thank you. I appreciate that. So I'll be honest with you. I honestly don't have any idea whether or not the attempt to raid is going through, and I don't know why. Well, we are going to give this one more shot just in case I am failing at typing. But no, that does not seem to be working. Huh. Well, okay, that's problematic. I honestly don't understand why it doesn't want to let me raid. So, do me a favor, if you could. I am going to have to just go ahead and end the stream. If you could, please go over to Lord Gazumba's channel, and uh, I'm not sure what tonight's topic is, but I am sure it will be very, very interesting because they always are. Yeah, so have a great night, everyone.